So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Lynn Canyon Ecology Center's and North Shore Black Bear Society's presentation of the North Shore is Bear Country. This will be about 20 to 30 minutes with some time for questions as well. So please keep your questions handy. And I am going to ask you to ask your questions in the chat. And during the presentation, if you have any points of clarification, you're welcome to ask those in the chat and I'll jump in and ask Lucy to clarify. However, if you have bigger, longer questions, you might consider leaving those to the end and we'll place them in the chat at that point. I'd like to acknowledge before we begin the lands that I'm on right now and the Ecology Center is on, the lands of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam people. And I'd like to also welcome Lucy, who is with the North Shore Black Bear Society. And she's been working with many bears on these lands for many years now and would like to share her understanding of how to work safely with them and be with the bears in our community. So thank you very much, Lucy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate the opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Are we ready to get going?
We are ready.
Okay. And please, can you just confirm for me, Trish, you can see my screen?
I can see your screen. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for sharing some time with me this morning and the Ecology Centre to learn a little bit more about black bears and their behaviour, and most importantly, how we should behave when we spend time in the bear's home and what we should do if we have a close encounter with a bear. So I'd like to start off by acknowledging that the North Shore is bear country. So the North Shore Black Bear Society has been working, providing education to residents and visitors to the North Shore for about 15 years now. So black bears have lived on the North Shore long before people. So it's our responsibility to learn how to share this space with these beautiful animals. We have a website, northshorebears.com, where you can learn more information about bears. We can also use the website to make reports for bear activity. So we spend a lot of our time doing education in residential areas. Because of the nature of where we live in this beautiful place beside rivers and creeks and green spaces, it's absolutely normal for us to see black bears and other animals traveling through our community. A lot of our education is focused on food sources that we might have around our homes that will keep bears in residential areas. We use social media, Instagram and Facebook to share tips on what you can do to make your property less attractive to bears, and tips, of course, on when we are camping, hiking and biking in bear habitat. Some of the things that we do that you may have seen is we place the bear in area signs across the North Shore. This year already, we've placed over 150 signs all across the North Shore. You can see a bear absolutely anywhere, down at the beach in Deep Cove, by the Auto Mall, on 13th and Lonsdale. The North Shore is bear country. Just looking at British Columbia. So British Columbia is home to more bears than anywhere else in the whole of Canada, which is why it's especially important that we learn more about bears and their behavior. We have two types of bears that live here in British Columbia. We first of all have got the North American black bear, and here in BC we've got a very healthy population. We've got about 140,000 black bears that live all across British Columbia. The other bear that we have is the brown bear, which here in BC we nicknamed the grizzly bear. In BC we've got about 10,000 grizzlies. Now, you will not see a grizzly bear in the wild on the North Shore. If you want to get up close to a grizzly bear, I suggest you go and meet my friends Grinder and Cooler up at Grouse Mountain. But we don't have grizzly bears in our forests in the wild. But you don't have to go too far to be in grizzly and black bear habitat. You just need to go to Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, or Manning Park in the other direction. And those places are home to both those types of bears. So we like to tell you how to tell the difference. So lots of people might think, well, a black bear is going to have black fur, and a brown bear or grizzly bear will have brown fur. But that's actually not the case. Grizzly bears can also be black. They can be dark brown, light brown, blonde, and even white. Black bears, of course, can be black. They can be dark brown, light brown, blonde, and even white. So we look at what we call other physical characteristics, other things that we can look at the bear and say, I think that's a grizzly bear, I think that's a black bear. And it can be very difficult to tell sometimes. Here are some things that we look for. Notice on the grizzly bear has a big hump on their shoulder, and that's all muscle. And that's because grizzly bears love to dig. They spend a lot of time digging for roots of plants, digging for animals that live underground like ground squirrels, or digging for clams on the beach. They'll also dig their winter den. So their home for the winter for a grizzly bear is usually up on the mountain, and they dig a tunnel and then a chamber, a room into the side of the mountain, and that's where they spend the winter. So all that muscle is to help them dig. Black bears don't have a big hump of muscle, although older male bears sometimes have a slight hump. So it can be difficult to tell sometimes. There are other things too. We can look at the claws. Now remember, we don't want to get close to bears, but we can look through binoculars if you're in the wild and you see a bear. If you're up at Grouse Mountain though, the next time you look at Grinder and Cooler, look at their really long claws. Grizzly bears have got very long claws. They can be up to 11 centimeters long, and they're actually quite straight. And they use those again to dig. They dig very deep, precise holes. Black bear claws are very, very different, and they're very difficult to see. Grizzly claws are very obvious. They're usually very white. Black bear claws are actually very short, and they're usually black, and they're very, very curved, and they're very sharp. So black bears have evolved in forested areas, and they've evolved to be excellent tree climbers. So on each paw, a bear has 5 claws, and for black bears, they have got these five sharp curved claws, and they help them to grab onto the tree. And so black bears can climb trees in seconds. A tree is a safe place for a black bear, and they spend a lot of time hiding from people and from dogs up in the trees. Now, grizzly bears like to live in big, wide open spaces. And with having quite long, straight claws, it's very difficult for a grizzly to climb a tree. Grizzly bears spend much more time on the ground. Other things we can look for are the ears. So grizzly bears have got very small, rounded ears, and black bears have got big, goofy ears, kind of like Mickey Mouse. So there's some different things that we can look at to tell, is that a grizzly, is that a black bear? Now remember, you won't see a grizzly bear in the wild here on the North Shore. What we do have though are black bears. And at this time of year, this is about the same size that a cub would be at this time of year. So our small cubs that were born in January are still only about the same size as a cat right now. So lots of people will tell us that they've seen a bear cub, and it often turns out to be a teenage bear. So bear cubs right now are still very, very tiny. And you might see a brown colored black bear on the North Shore. We have lots of them. So remember, if you see a bear in the forest at Lynn Canyon or in your neighborhood here on the North Shore, it might have brown fur, but it will be a black bear. This is a very special kind of black bear that lives in only one place in the wild in the whole world, and it's here in British Columbia. Now, unfortunately, we won't see one on the North Shore, but this is a very rare kind of black bear. It's called a spirit bear or a commodie bear. Most commonly, people call them spirit bears. And they live in the Great Bear Rainforest, which is a beautiful island just north of Bella Coola. So this is a kind of black bear. Every 1 in 20 bears that are born in the Great Bear Rainforest are born with white fur. It's a very special gene that both the parents need to carry in order to produce these white-colored black bears. Black bears have some incredible senses. They've got very, very good hearing, and they can see very well. They can see just as well as we can. They can see in color, and they can see very well at night, much better than we can. But their best tool is their nose. Look how big this bear's nose is. And their nose is 2,000 times better than ours. So people, we usually trust our eyes. Bears trust their nose. They use their nose to find food. They use their nose to figure out what things are. So bears spend a lot of time stood up on their back hind legs, just like people. And that doesn't mean the bear is angry or mean. A standing bear is a curious bear. So just like when we stand up on our tiptoes to reach for things or to see further away, that's what the bear is doing. So you may see a bear in the forest. The bear might stand up on their back legs. That's the bear standing to lift its nose in the air to figure out what you are. So black bears spend a lot of time up on their hind legs. Imagine little bear cubs as well. They're very, very tiny. They're very low to the ground. In order to see what's going on around them and smell what's going on around them, they have to stand up. So they do spend a lot of time on their back hind legs, just like this little guy here. So black bears also have other markings, and that helps us to say, hey, I've seen that bear before. I recognize the color of your fur or that patch that you have on your chest. That patch is called a chest blaze. And lots of bear cubs are born with this little patch on their chest, and they're different shapes and different sizes. Some can be quite gray and some are very bright white. Lots of cubs though will lose this as they mature. So in the first few years of a black bear's life, their fur can change quite a lot. They can be born with black fur, spend a whole spring and summer and fall out in the wild with black fur. They go into the den, and the following spring, the bear emerges from the den and their fur is brown. So when they get to about 4 years old, that's usually the coloring that the bear will keep. And some bears, if their mom has that patch on her chest, it's very likely that they will keep theirs as an adult bear as well. So this is what we use to identify bears, these special markings that they have on their chest. Bears are very, very fast. Even big grizzly bears like Grinder and Cooler up at Grouse Mountain, they are 1,000 pounds. But if they need to be, black bears can be very, very fast. And it's very important that we remember when we meet wild animals, we should never ever run. Wild animals have a natural instinct to chase something. Think of a puppy chasing a ball or a cat chasing a mouse. So when we meet wild animals, whether that's a bobcat, a coyote, a bear, it's really important that instead of running, we are nice and slow and calm with our movements. Now, black bears can run at 65 kilometers per hour. No person can run that fast. Now, if you see a bear and you're on your bike, you don't want to pedal away really, really fast. What that could do, it could trigger that bear's natural instinct to chase something. And usually it's out of curiosity. Bears can also be very, very slow. So we have to be very patient, especially when we're in their home. If you're in the forest and you see a bear ahead of you, it's best to turn around and take a different trail. Sometimes the bears will be on the trails and they spend time on the trails to save energy. They're smart animals. It's much easier to walk on the trail than it is to bushwhack. And so sometimes bears will be on the trail, and it's our role to be very patient and allow that bear the time to pass or the time to eat those berries, and we give them lots and lots of space. We should never, never try to move a bear on in their home in the forest. As I mentioned, black bears love trees. So tree is a safe place for a black bear. When they smell people in the forest, or they hear people, or they smell our dogs, typical black bear behavior is to climb into a tree and hide until you have gone. If you see a bear in a tree, it will not be coming down until people are far away and the bear feels safe enough to climb back down that tree. Bears take food up into a tree, they sleep in trees, and in the summer especially, they'll spend a lot of time high up in the trees in the shade to cool off. It's very important that if you see a bear in the forest or in the neighborhood and the bear is in a tree, that you don't go to the base of the tree to take a photograph. All that you do is you trap that bear and you frighten that bear. So if you have a bear in the tree in the neighborhood or in your garden, please make sure that everybody comes inside and that they're nice and quiet. We need to bring dogs inside as well. And once it's nice and quiet, the bear will climb down the tree and go back into the forest. Let's talk a little bit about what bears are up to at different times of year. So I'm sure many of you know that bears hibernate for the winter. And here on the North Shore, our black bears will find a den, and that den will be their home where they'll spend the winter. In our forests, it's usually in a nice quiet place under a big old fallen tree, and the bear might dig a little tunnel again and a hole under the tree, and that's where they'll spend the winter. We do have some caves as well on the North Shore. So bear dens, the entrance, the doorway to the den is very, very small, and you can walk by these without even noticing. And so the bear is like a cat. They squeeze into the small space, and that helps to keep them nice and warm over the winter. So bears will spend weeks and sometimes months preparing their den for the winter. When a bear goes into the den, and that's usually around late November, when the bear goes into the den, they could be there for 6 months without ever leaving. And for 6 months, the bear does not need to drink, eat, or go to the bathroom. So bear dens are nice and clean. But bears aren't true hibernating animals. They don't go into a very, very deep sleep over the winter. In fact, they go into a light sleep, and every day they move around and they stretch. And that's to keep their muscles working. It could be a danger over the winter. Another animal could go into the den. Or maybe the sun comes out and the snow melts and the den starts to flood. The bear needs to be able to respond very quickly and get out of the den for safety. And so that's why they go into a light sleep, not a very, very deep sleep like true hibernating animals. Something that happens over the winter at the end of January, that is when all bear cubs are born. So black bears and grizzly bears are born inside the den at the end of January. So a female bear will go into the den alone. It's actually mating season for bears right now. So at this time, males and females are getting together for a couple of days and then they separate. So the female bear goes into the den in the early winter. And if she goes into the den and she's nice and healthy, she got lots of food and her body's really healthy, any fertilized eggs that she has inside her body will develop into little bear cubs. If she goes into the den though and she didn't find much food and she's skinny and unhealthy, or maybe she was hit by a car, well, her body knows that she is not strong enough that year to raise and care for cubs. So any eggs that she has inside would just absorb into her body. But if she does have a bear cub, she's going to stay very, very close to that cub, and the bear could have more than one cub. Actually, most commonly, the bears have 2 or 3 little bear cubs. The record is 6. She stays close to this bear to protect the bear from dangers being other bears, cougars, coyotes, people, dogs. She's going to teach this little bear everything that he needs to know to survive in the wild. She'll teach him how to swim and how to climb trees. How to climb trees is one of the first things that she'll teach this bear. And that's when this little bear will spend a lot of time in the trees when they first leave their den. So we start to see bears leaving their dens around early March, and that's usually the big males. The female bears that have little bear cubs will stay in and around the den area for a little bit longer to allow those cubs to grow. So we usually start to see bear cubs around early May. She's going to teach the cubs when and where to find food. Now, let me tell you something about mother black bears. Lots and lots of people think that a mother black bear with cubs is very, very angry and aggressive and dangerous. In fact, a female black bear with cubs is statistically the least aggressive bear that you will meet. Now, we should never ever get close, of course. We give bears lots of personal space. But the way this mother protects her family is not by confronting people, but actually by hiding. So what happens is if she sees a danger to the little cubs, she makes a sound with her teeth, a clacking noise, and they know that means mom is telling us to go and hide in the tree. So the little bear cubs climb up the tree so fast, and they'll hide at the top of the tree. The mother bear will hide at the base of the tree. She's going to be really, really quiet. She doesn't want to meet you. And so as long as you don't go up to the tree to try and pet the little bear cubs, she has no reason to show herself. So she keeps herself and her family safe by being quiet and hiding from people and other dangers. So black bears and grizzly bears are classed as carnivores, as animals that eat meat. But in fact, they're much like people. They are omnivores and they eat plants and animals. This animal protein makes up only about 20% of a black bear's diet. I think we all know that they like honey. They also like to eat the baby bees inside a beehive. So a beehive is a really good reward for a bear. Now they've got thick fur. They have 2 layers of fur, one underneath to keep them warm and one over top to keep them dry. So they don't mind a few bee stings. The only place it would really hurt the bear would be around their eyes and around their nose. But they don't mind because they love the honey so much. They really love to eat bugs. So when we spend time in the forest, we can see the shredded logs where the bears are looking for ants and grubs and moths. Sometimes they'll take birds' eggs. Of course, we know that bears like salmon. So our bears here on the West Coast are very lucky that they have access to salmon. And salmon and bears play a really, really important role that helps people. So bears are one of the only animals that can fish for salmon. Salmon are really big and heavy. So in the fall, when the salmon come back up to the rivers and up to the creeks, that's where we'll see lots of bears. Typically what happens is the bear takes the salmon from the river or the creek, and they take that salmon back into the forest. The bear will eat their favorite parts, which are the brains and the eggs and the skin, and they leave the rest of that salmon in the forest. And that helps to feed other animals. Anything that's left over eventually helps to feed the soil and helps the trees to grow. So we call bears and salmon keystone species, meaning that we need both of them to have a nice, healthy, balanced ecosystem. So we can thank bears and salmon for all the beautiful trees and all the beautiful fresh air that we have here in British Columbia. So this, as I mentioned, makes up a small amount of what they eat. Most of what black bears eat is vegetation. They absolutely love grasses and dandelions. They love berries. Berries are very, very important to bears. And in the summer, when we have lots of berries, they can eat 40,000 in a single day. So look out for these bear foods when you're in the forest. If you see lots of berries, you should expect to also see a bear. When bears eat lots of berries in the summer, they go to the bathroom 15 times a day, and they help to spread these seeds across the forest. We ask that you never take berries from the forest, and you keep that food in the forest for the animals that rely on it to survive. There's lots of beautiful berries around our neighborhoods that we can pick, but of course, be very careful and make sure you know what you are eating. So in the summer, bears spend lots of time foraging for the berries. In the fall, that's when they're very, very active looking for food. And in the fall, bears are awake for about 20 hours a day, looking to eat as much food as possible to get as big and as fat as possible so they can survive the winter when there's no food around. So in the fall, as I mentioned, bears are awake for 20 hours a day, looking to eat about 20,000 calories a day. And after that fall feast, female bears that have cubs, they've grown up quite a bit by the fall, as you can see, they'll all actually go into the den together for one more winter. That family will squeeze into a den, and they'll spend the winter there, and the following spring, she will send those bears away. They are now teenage bears, and they are big enough and old enough to live on their own. So she sends them away to find their own space to live in the forest away from her. And then she's free to meet another male bear and have cubs the following year. So they stay with their cubs for about a year and a half, very short amount of time, and lots of that time is spent inside the den, asleep. In the wild, bears can live for 20 to 25 years. This is a male bear eating dandelions in Manning Park. Really are one of their favorite foods. Let's quickly talk about clues that you can look for. So when we spend time in the forest, there may not always be a sign to say a bear is in the area, but we live in British Columbia. And so we know when we spend time in the forest, we're going into the bear's home. So there are some clues we can look for to see if bears have recently been around. Bear tracks. So bear tracks look a little bit like human footprints. They've got 5 toes and 5 claw marks. If you see bear tracks going one way, take a different route. We never want to get close to bears on purpose. Bear scat, bear poop. A good thing about this is that they eat so much fruit and so much vegetation that it doesn't smell really bad. If you find this and it's shiny and wet, then you know it's recently been deposited by that bear, and you know a bear's recently been around. It tells us roughly how big the bear is, and it also tells us, of course, what the bear has been eating. So at this time of year, the bear scat is usually bright pink and purple from all the berries. And in the early spring, when they eat lots of grass, it's very black. You might also notice marked trees. This is how bears talk to each other. They leave smells and messages on trees. So this is usually male bears that do this, and a male bear will reach up really, really high onto the tree to make himself look really big, and he marks the tree with his claws. It leaves a visual mark we can see, but it also leaves behind a smell. So that tells other bears in the area a big male bear is around. So females know a male is around. So if it's mating season, they can stay in that area so that they can have cubs. That tells younger teenage bears that a big male is in the area and they need to move on. We ask that if you find this, that you take a photograph, but please don't touch it. If we touch this, we take away the bear's message by leaving our human smell on there. Shredded logs, that's where the bears are looking for bugs. So all these are clues that we can look for to see if a bear is using that area. So when we go into the forest, there are some things that we need to do because we live in bear country. We always should be looking around, looking for those clues, looking for that big pile of fresh bear scat. Is a bear in the area right now? Be very aware of your surroundings. If you like to hike alone, we say don't wear headphones. We also need to be listening for cracking of branches and rustling in the bushes that could be a bear. It's very important too that we make noise. We need to use our voice when we spend time in the forest. And that helps animals to avoid us. So bear bells, those little bells you put on your backpack, are pretty useless. They're very quiet and they don't say to the bear, hey, that's a person, but your voice does. Now bears don't know English, so we can talk in any language, but when we use our voice, it gives the bear an opportunity to go and hide in a tree or hide in the bush until you have gone. They don't want to meet people. It's very important that we stay on the trail, stay on the path. If we go off trail, that's when we might disturb a bear that's sleeping or eating in the bushes. Plus you might get lost. It's really important if you have a dog that you keep your dog on a close leash when you're in the parks and in the forests here on the North Shore. What happens with dogs that aren't on leash is that they do go off into the bushes, and sometimes they can frighten the bear. and the bear thinks it needs to defend itself. And so the bear might chase the dog. And typically the dog then runs back to you, the owner. And that's when people and bears have these close encounters. So keeping your dog on leash helps to keep you safe, your dog safe, and the wild animals that live in the forest safe. We never want to go up to a bear and ask them for a photograph. So we should never ever get close to bears, especially for photographs. It puts you way too close to a wild animal. It can also frighten bears. When people get close, we could push a young bear into the path of a big dominant male bear who could be a danger to that bear. Never ever get close to bears on purpose. If you have a close encounter with a bear, leave your phone alone and be present. It's really important that if we take food into the parks, to the beach, to the forest, to the campsites, that we always stay with that food. It's very, very rare for a bear to walk up to a person looking for food. But if we walk away from our picnic table or our backpack and there's no one around, the bears will take that food. Bears that eat human foods are often killed. It's our responsibility to make sure we stay with that food at all times. When we spend time in the forest and in the parks, please take all your garbage and organics home with you. Our parks cannot cope with the amount of garbage that is being left in our district parks and our provincial parks. The garbage cans are overflowing. Please take everything you bring into the forest and in the parks home with you, including organics, things like banana peel, orange peel. If we leave those things on the trail, it just brings animals down closer to where people are. If you're spending a lot of time in the forest, if you hike, bike, camp across British Columbia, we want you to take bear spray and know how to use it. There's a really great video on our website, northshorebears.com, a 5-minute video that tells you when and how to use bear spray. I can answer questions on that too at the end. But let's talk about what to actually do then. If you're on the trail or in your neighborhood and you have a close encounter with a bear, it can happen. The bear maybe was focused on eating the grass and didn't hear you coming, didn't smell you. Maybe you're walking by a river or a creek and we weren't loud enough with our voice. We can sometimes have these close surprise encounters with bears. I've met almost 200 bears across the North Shore. I've had lots of close surprise encounters. I've never had a negative experience, and that's because I know what to do, and I'm going to share that with you now. So the messaging many years ago, so the old messaging, and this is not what you do, used to be if you have a close encounter with a bear, straight away be big and be loud. Well, now we know more about black bear behavior. We know that all that does is it pressures the bear to defend itself. When we're big and we're loud, we basically say, hey bear, we're a danger to you. And so we frighten the bear or pressure them into defending themselves. So we don't want to be big and be loud. Instead, we do these 3 things. So just imagine you're walking through the forest and you see a bear. Sounds easy, but the first thing I want you to do is to stay nice and calm. Black bears are by nature not aggressive animals, okay? We want to stay nice and calm. I suggest taking a nice deep breath, and that helps you to calm down, also stops you from screaming. Okay, our instinct when we see things that frighten us is to scream and run away. What we should do is make sure that we don't scream. We want to stay calm. By staying calm, that helps the bear to stay calm. Okay, we don't run away, remember, because that could trigger a chase instinct from that bear. So when I meet bears, take a deep breath and I stay calm. The bear's going to need a moment too to figure out what you are, especially if you've surprised the bear. So we help the bear out and we use our voice. And every single time you meet a bear, you use your voice. It is the best tool that you have. We speak to the bear in any language, remember, but in a nice, calm voice. This tells the bear that you are a person. Now, when I meet bears and I start to speak to them and they realize I'm a person, they look for the closest tree to climb, or they step back off the trail and into the bush. So you talk nice and calmly to the bear. You do want to keep the bear in front of you. You want to look at the bear, but we don't stare eye to eye. The bear would see that as a threat. It's absolutely fine if you catch the bear's eye for a moment, but we say look at their chest, look at their legs, keep them in front of you. And as you calmly talk to that bear, you're going to slowly back away, nice and slow and calm with our movements. And when we back away from the bear, that shows the bear we are giving you personal space. We are giving you respect. We are not a danger. By physically moving your body away, that's how we communicate that to the bear. You also back away so you can see the bear climb the tree or leave the area. And when the bear climbs the tree or goes back into the bush, that's when you can slowly turn around and take a different route. And if you see a bear, whether it's in the forest or if it's in a residential area in the neighborhoods, please let us know. We collect all the data on wildlife activity, and it helps us to do education in areas where bears are. So thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope that you enjoyed the mini workshop, and thank you for the Ecology Centre, our friends there, for helping us out with this. It's very timely, and thanks for sharing your time, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. We really appreciate that. So it's Tricia again. If you would like to ask a question, I'm going to ask you to keep your video and sound off and just do that in the chat. You probably saw the chat box pop up just now. If you don't know where it is, it's just at the bottom of your screen. So head on over there, and if you do have any questions, please let me know. Okay, there's a couple of questions. How do we let you know about bear encounters?
There's a few different ways. You can go to our website, northshorebears.com, and it created a very simple report it form. So there's just a few questions that we ask based on what the bear was up to and where you saw the bear, so we can target that area for education. You can also call us. So on our website, we've got all our contact details there.
And that's the North Shore Black Bear Society, just in case folks missed the very beginning of the presentation. So you can Google that.
Thank you.
Someone asked, if you are calm and you start walking away slowly and the bear still follows you, what do you do?
That's a great question. So that's actually quite rare. It's very rare for bears to approach people intentionally. I've had quite a few encounters where I've been backing away nice and slowly, but the bear still approaches. And I can see that the bear is not approaching me with intent. They're actually just trying to take the trail that I am on to get to a food source. In that kind of situation, when you see the bear is approaching, what we should always do is just back away and give the bear lots of space, talk in a calm voice. But we can sometimes just step off the trail and allow the bear to pass. Now, if the bear is approaching you with intent, so the bear is looking at you, is focused on you, and this can sometimes happen, though again, it's very rare. It's usually teenage bears. Teenage bears are curious. They might approach people. They're just learning, just like human teenagers. These teenage bears often are in places where they shouldn't be. They're just learning the ropes about how to navigate life with so many people and dogs in their home. So if a bear approaches you with intent, so you're backing away, talking calmly, still the bear is approaching. This is when we need to be brave, and we tell the bear that they are now getting into our personal space. So when the bear approaches, this is when you stand your ground, you raise your arms in the air and use a deep, firm voice, and you say, hey, no, too close. Bears are smart. They respond to the tone of our voices. So the most common situation when bears approach people like that is they might get close. When we stand our ground and we use that deep, firm voice, the bear will then bolt in the other direction. That's usually curiosity, or it's sometimes a bear saying, hey, you're in my space. I want you to leave. I'm smart. I don't want to get injured. I won't make physical contact. I'm going to push you away, and then I'm going to run away. So that's the most common negative encounter that people have with bears, and it doesn't end in physical contact. That black bears rarely make physical contact with anything, including people. When bears make physical contact, And these kind of situations on our local trails, it's often when people are very close to the bear feels threatened and it feels it needs to defend itself. And sometimes that could be a swat of a paw, a nip, or a bite. But that is incredibly rare for black bears to make physical contact with people.
Okay, another one, you'd mentioned bear spray. So curious where you can buy bear spray and whether it expires.
Yep, so bear spray is a great non-lethal tool. Okay, so bear spray is to be used only during a close encounter with a bear. So if you're in the forest and you're backing away and the bear approaches, you're going to stand your ground, raise your arms, use a deep, firm tone. You would also prepare your bear spray in that situation. Highly advocate the use of bear spray. It's, as I mentioned, non-lethal tool. So if the bear is approaching within about 12 meters, what you would do is you would spray the bear in the face. As soon as the bear's nose hits that spray, that very, very strong pepper spray, they are gone. Their nose is very sensitive. They can't stand bear spray. It doesn't hurt them long term. They might have a few issues breathing and it's difficult for them to see. I do not recommend that you spray bears in residential areas unless your life depends on it, but we shouldn't be spraying bears just in the street there. We could force them into traffic, but it's definitely a great tool to take into the forest. I buy mine from Mountain Equipment Co-op. You must always have it accessible. It's no good in the bottom of your pack. If you take bear spray when you're mountain biking, which you definitely should, if you bike, you're fast and quiet, and then you increase the chances of close surprise encounter. But keep the bear spray on you and not on your bike. You could be separated from your bike. Bear spray has an expiry. It usually lasts for about 4 years. And then what happens is that it just doesn't deploy as far. So the video on our website has a lot more information about the best practices for transporting, carrying, and using bear spray.
Okay, excellent. I think there's a couple of questions that are repeats, so I'm just going to scroll through them, but I don't think this is a repeat. Question about what the largest prey species of the American black bear is.
Well, here on the North Shore, we have no grizzlies, but anywhere where there are grizzly bears will force the black bears to occupy areas a little bit closer to people. The grizzlies will get the best prime habitats, and grizzlies really like to be far away from people. So for younger bears on the North Shore, black bears, the biggest risk is other dominant male bears. They're a threat to bear cubs and younger bears, cougars, and coyotes. Some statistics from Whistler told us that coyotes were the highest cause of mortality for young bear cubs in Whistler.
Okay, there's a couple of questions about the specific bear encounter last week. I think you mostly covered this in your previous answer, but people were curious about why that could have happened and what the best way would be to respond in that type of scenario.
Well, let me start by saying that last summer, a bear was killed at Rice Lake. The bear, unfortunately, was shot right at the lake. And that was because during the spring and the summer, people were going up to that area and leaving food unattended. People were climbing and leaving their backpacks full of food at the bottom. People were having picnics and walking away. So the bear found that food and started to spend a lot more time around people. And that bear was not aggressive. The bear didn't make physical contact with anybody, but as a precaution, that bear was shot. So we do know that in that area and across British Columbia, we have issues with people leaving food intentionally to feed bears and unintentionally by walking away from food. We know that we have issues with people approaching bears for photographs. So young bears, and the young bear that was at Rice Lake, the young bear that they're looking for, young teenage bears are less intimidating and they do become a target for selfie takers. So we teach bears that it's okay to be around people by approaching them for photographs, by leaving food available. Now, in the kind of situation when you have a very, very close encounter with a bear, it's very, very important that we try to stay nice and calm. If you scream or you frighten the bear and you're very, very close, that's when you can pressure that defensive encounter where the bear swats or bites or nips. And that bear that bear is gone. They have not found that bear. To me, I can't speak specifically to this situation. I wasn't there, nor have I spoken to the family involved. Now, fortunately, that little girl is physically fine. But to me, that kind of behavior suggests that the bear felt threatened and pressured. It defended itself. It knows it's done something wrong, and that's why the bear has not been found. Now, traps have been set, food has been left around the lake, and still the bear did not come back. I feel like this was a young bear that's made a mistake, is aware that they've done something wrong, and they've gone to retreat into the forest. So when a bear is close to you, you be nice and calm, talk to the bear, and back away nice and slowly.
So last couple questions, I'll just put them together because they're more bear spray questions. One of them was a question about the size of the bottle. And then Michelle was also asking a question about, or making a comment about how much of the bear spray you should use, and the idea that you don't need to distribute an entire container into the air at the same time.
Exactly. So I forget the size of the can, but the one that they sell at Mountain Equipment Co-op has about 12 seconds of spray, and that's the standard size for bear spray. And so with those 12 seconds, you want to use it very wisely, absolutely. So we don't deploy the whole can, we don't empty the can during the encounter. What we'll do is if the bear approaches and you feel the need to use that bear spray, is you do a very short, probably 2-second warning blast. And that's usually enough to send the bear on their way. It's a very strong smell that they do not like. What we should do is make sure that we keep the bear spray ready if the bear comes back, or perhaps the wind took the bear spray in a different direction, or the bear was approaching quite fast and went under the spray. Then what you would do is you would spray in a Z shape, and that builds a wall between you and the bear. Now remember, if a bear is approaching you with intent, they're actually going to be very low to the ground. Their head's going to be very low to the ground. So you do want to aim low, right in the bear's nose and into their eyes. But it's a very effective tool. It's more effective than a gun at stopping a bear from approaching people.
Okay, I see one last question here, and then we'll wrap up. I also see lots and lots of thank yous as people head off for the day. So thank you so much on behalf of all the thank yous in the chat. The last one was just about if you don't have bear spray. I know bear spray can be challenging to get sometimes, especially when these sorts of scenarios have happened. And so if you don't have any bear spray and a bear is approaching and maybe the bear swats or bites or something like that, so what is the best strategy for a very close bear encounter if you don't have bear spray?
Absolutely. So in that situation at Rice Lake, I really feel like it wasn't an intended physical contact encounter. It was defensive. And so the bear made a quick bite and ran away. Now, if that had been an intentional physical encounter, it would have been prolonged and much more serious. If a black bear makes physical contact with you, you fight back. You show the bear that you are not prey. So if a bear makes physical contact, you aim your attack at their eyes and their nose, the most sensitive part of their body, and you fight with all you have. Fortunately, physical encounters are incredibly rare.
So thank you so much, Luci. We really appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit about black bears with us and teaching us how to work well with them in our neighborhoods and in the forests around our homes. So thank you so much. And the folks who aren't in the chat, this is being recorded, and as soon as the recording is available through Zoom, we will put it up on the website. So hopefully today, but if not today, probably very early next week. It will be on the Lynn Canyon Ecology Center website, so you can share that with your friends. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Luci.
Thank you, Tricia, and the team at the Ecology Center. And thank you for everyone for sharing some time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.